What's up, my friends? It is C-Threep, and today I want to show you how to edit the audio from a podcast that you recorded if you had one microphone and you were doing an interview and have multiple people, surrounding the microphone, talking into the microphone. How can you get rid of the background noise? How can you adjust the volume levels in case someone's a little too quiet and someone's a little too loud? How to get rid of some annoying frequencies. So we're going to go over a couple of these things. I'll explain it as simply as I possibly can. And we're going to use this program called Audacity. It's a free audio editing program that works really well for podcasts. It's not the most fantastic audio editing program for editing music, but for podcasts, it's actually pretty good, pretty decent free software. Let's quickly listen to this little sound bite that I have from this interview of my friend interviewing somebody else for his podcast, and then we'll talk about some things we can do to make it sound better.
I applied again, got past the first round, got past the second round, and I made it to the final round, and I got the money that I was requesting. I got $1,700.
Now, okay, so you stumbled upon this grant seed program.
Okay, so these two individuals are talking, and the first thing you'll notice is that this was used, the microphone that was used was a stereo microphone, meaning you can kind of hear the one person, if you're listening to this on headphones, you can hear the one person that's being interviewed slightly to the left and my buddy who's doing the interview slightly to the right. That's not ideal for a podcast. A lot of people are listening to podcasts on the go. Maybe they just have one earbud in and not both. And so if they just have the one earbud in, the person that's, in the left, a little bit closer to the left side of the microphone, you're going to hear them more. But then when the person that's a little to the right, they're going to be a lot quieter. So you want both voices to be equal in both headphones. So if you used a mono microphone, then you don't have to worry about it. But in some cases, you're using stereo. So what you're going to first want to do is go to this tracks tab and go stereo track to mono. And it just converts this stereo track. There was two tracks here, and now it just became one. And it is now mono.
Tried again, got past the first round.
Now, okay, so you stumbled upon...
See, they're both equally out of each headphone. So that's the first thing you're going to want to do. Now what we're going to want to do is check for background noise. Sometimes there is a lot of just white noise in the background if it's kind of a not so good microphone, or if there's a fan on or something in the room. So getting rid of the background noise is a fairly simple process to do, and I have a separate video that I've made all about how to get rid of background noise using this exact software. So I don't want to rehash and make this video you're watching extra long by explaining that entire process. So at the end of this video, you can watch that video. I've got a link at the end of this video. But you're going to want to remove any white noise that is in the background. Very simple to do with this effect tab and noise reduction. Very simple process explained in that other video that I have. Okay, so you've removed the background noise if needed. And then what you're going to notice is if you've got multiple people in the room all talking into the same microphone, likely the microphone wasn't placed in an ideal spot for every person in the room. So some people were a little bit closer to the mic, some people were a bit further away. And what happens if too many people are kind of far away from the mic, you start losing some bass frequencies and your voices all sound kind of thin. It's kind of like if I'm back here and I'm talking, my voice sounds a lot thinner than if I'm really close to the microphone. And so one effect that we can use to add some of those bass frequencies back is go to the effects tab and click equalization. And let's click on graphic. It's just a little more simple to explain it this way. What we're going to do is on this little graph here, you see between 20 hertz and 100 hertz. These are the low bass frequencies, and we want to boost those a little bit so that everybody's voices have a little bit more bass in them if needed. This isn't always going to be the case, but often if you've got one microphone and everyone's talking into it, there might be a lack of bass. I'm going to kind of gloss over this. I do have a whole other video that explains equalization in detail. Again, there will be a link to that if after explaining this, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I do have a whole other video about that you can check out. So what we're going to do is click on these little buttons here and drag them up. This might be overboard, but let's try boosting it by 10 decibels to start. Just a starting point. So that means these low frequencies here are now 10 decibels louder than they used to be. So it's pretty straightforward. Equalization isn't too hard of a concept to grasp. Let's go up to about 100 or maybe 130 and just click preview and see what that sounds like.
A nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that you make. So anyway, a nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that.
Okay, now let's hear it without it.
A nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that. A nickel or something off every chicken that,
And with it again.
A nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that you make. So anyway.
So you notice his voice sounds a bit more full. Now, be cautious with this. You don't want to overdo it. In fact, usually, for example, the microphone that I'm using right now, and I'm the only one talking into it, when I edit my vocals for this video that you're watching, I usually don't even have to boost the bass at all. Maybe by 1 or 2 decibels or something. And if I was maybe a little too close to the microphone, then sometimes I would have to get rid of some of the bass. So just be cautious. Maybe start by boosting it by 5 or 10. And if it doesn't sound really boomy, then it's okay. But the last thing you want it to sound like is like noticeable bass. You don't want it to be noticeable and sound muffly and boomy at all. While we're here, let's look at some other frequencies that are sometimes a bit troublesome. Usually around 500 hertz, we want to get rid of those frequencies because they just don't sound very good. Let me in fact boost it a lot and let's see what it sounds like with it boosted.
A nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that you make.
If you can hear that other frequency in there that's almost like this. It sounds like you've got a bucket over your head and you're talking. That was just to illustrate what that frequency sounds like. So we're actually going to get rid of that a little bit. Maybe bring that down by 6 or so. We don't want to be too dramatic with it.
A nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that you make.
It smooths it out a little bit. And if the voices are a little too muffled, then maybe around 7,000 or so, you'll want to boost it by a little bit.
A nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that you make.
Again, be cautious. If you boost these ones by more than just a few decibels, sometimes the voices are going to be very harsh and the S's are going to be very harsh sounding. So we're going to be very gentle with that. Once you've made those changes, you click OK. And finally, we want to add an effect called compressor. Now, what this effect will do is you notice these are the audio waves of our track. We've got some really quiet parts, and then when they laugh, it gets quite a bit louder. And then it gets quiet again, and they laugh again, so it gets louder. So we're going to use an effect called a compressor that tames those loud peaks and kind of brings up the volume of the quieter parts so that it's a more consistent volume across the board, which makes it a much more listenable podcast. You don't want people to be, going about their day on a jog or whatever, listening to your podcast, and all of a sudden it gets super, super loud, and then it's too quiet. And you want it to be consistent and just comfortable to listen to, so they don't have to think twice about the volume. So let's go to the compressor effect. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. I don't want to just tell you exactly what you need to dial in on all these things here, because it is going to vary dramatically. So what I will tell you is a couple of guidelines that we can stick to, and then you can kind of mess around with how you need to. As for like attack time and release time, maybe leave attack time at like 0.3 seconds or something. This attack time and release time, they're not as crucial for a setting like this where there's just a couple people in the room talking into the microphone. These aren't the really crucial settings. Very hard to notice a difference in some of these adjustments. So just keep it about, 0.3 or 1 second for now. Once you learn compression a little bit better, you can get into the nitty-gritty of it if you want to. But for the sake of keeping this simple for you guys, let's just keep it at that. For a ratio, golly, I really do want to keep this video simple. So let's just say keep it at 2.5 or 3. You don't want to get too crazy with the ratio. All this is saying is that for every 2.5 decibels of volume that I have, it's going to reduce that by, reduce that down to 1. For every 3 decibels of input volume I have, it would reduce it down to 1, so on and so forth. A little more complicated than I'd really want to get into right now. So let's just keep it on the safe side, kind of like what we did with attack time and release time. Let's keep it at like 2.5 or 3 and just don't worry about it, okay? Odds are if you're watching this video you are just kind of in the very beginnings of this whole recording and mixing your vocals thing. So I see no reason to overload you with a bunch of different stuff that's just going to confuse you. Okay, let's just keep it simple to kind of get the ball rolling for you. And down the road, you're definitely going to want to learn these things a little bit better. But at this stage in your podcasting careers, I don't think it's too crucial for you to know everything that there is to know about compression and EQ. Okay, you just want a decent sounding podcast, right? Okay, so we're just going to keep it simple for you. Okay, threshold. Now, I apologize, my camera just died. I'm sure you're going to miss seeing my face. Threshold, again, I want to keep this super simple. So let's just keep it at like -10, and then we'll apply it and then see what the audio waves look like. And if they're not balanced enough, if some of them are still really small and some of them are still really big, then we'll come back to the compressor and bring it down another 10 or so. And then we'll look at it and see where it's at and bring it down more if we have to. But let's start conservatively with something like this, -13, that's fine. So let's click OK. And you notice it increased the volume, which is kind of what we wanted to have happen. It did increase the volume of some of these quiet parts, but it also increased the volume of some of the loud parts. See how loud this one is? It's like peaking right here, which is not going to sound very good. It's going to be clipping. So that one didn't work. Let's go edit, undo, go back to effect, go back to compressor, and let's try maybe -20-ish. See what that looks like. Okay, that looks a little bit more balanced, right? These quieter parts are now pretty comparable to these louder parts, like when they're laughing. But it still gets pretty close to clipping right there. So let's go undo, then go back to our compressor, and let's bring it down maybe to like -30-ish. Click OK. And there you go, look across the board. It's pretty consistent across the board, meaning the person listening to your podcast isn't going to have to be adjusting the volume all the time because it's pretty consistent. Now, if it is clipping here, what you can do is just adjust the volume, or the gain is what it's called. Adjust that down by a couple decibels. And the way we'll know if it's at the right volume is when you press play. Right up here, it will show you what the volume is. You want it to hover around -3 or so. I mean, you want it to basically get as close to 0 as you can, but I wouldn't stress it too much. Let's just see where the volume is right now.
A nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that you make. Right. So anyway, guess how many no's he got until he got a yes?
How many?
1,009.
Okay, so it was a pretty good volume right there. If we hadn't brought it down, I guess we didn't even have to adjust it. But let's say it was a little too loud.
A nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that you make.
So it's red a lot, and you can just tell, you can hear that it sounds like it's going to explode, and you don't want it to do that. So this is just a quick way, once you've added compression, if that is too loud, then you can just dial it down a little bit. You'll notice now that we've applied the compression that you can hear everything a lot better. It's a lot louder, which is what we're going for. But now we notice that there's quite a bit of bass. It's actually a little bit too much bass. So in the equalization phase of things, I added a bit too much bass because I was trying to get you guys to at least hear the difference that it was making to apply that effect. But just know that I probably applied too much. So you're going to want to, as I had mentioned earlier, just be conservative with it. Maybe start out by boosting it by 3 or 4, and that's it. And just run with it. Do the compression, and after you do compression, if it sounds still like it's lacking bass, then apply some more equalization, put some bass back in there. But with all of these effects, you really just want to be conservative and don't go overboard.
A nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that, a nickel or something off every chicken that, a nickel or something off every chicken that, piece of chicken that you make. Right. So anyway, guess how many no's he got?
That is it. Thank you for watching. I do have other videos that will go into further detail on some of these things, like how to remove background noise, or more explanation on what EQ is, or equalization. So feel free to watch either of those if you want a better understanding of it. And happy podcasting.